Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Mind Your Business Show. I am your host, Milt Walker, joined today by none other than Tony Calloway, the private money godfather. How are you today, sir?
Maestro, man. It is a beautiful, beautiful Saturday here in Columbus, Georgia, and
It
I
is.
couldn't be better. Got good friends, great weather, and got all my viewers out here checking us out this morning on the Mind Your Business Show. And I want to thank you all for making us an important part of your Saturday and an important part of your life. And I promise you, you're in for a treat today. But before we introduce our guest and see how he's doing, we got to check in on the techno wizard. Maestro, what's been going on in your world, my friend?
Oh man, it's been pretty interesting. I started a new routine, and it's kind of an old routine, but I kind of just got back into it.
Mm.
Just been doing my meditations in the morning and reading in the morning, and doing some exercising and everything before I start my day, so I can make sure I have the right bearing as I go into my day. And so it's been going really well. I'm feeling really grateful, and I'm just, I'm loving life, and putting all that energy back into my business and into the people who I serve. And so, life is good. Life is good.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, I'm glad to know you're getting your mojo right because
Right.
this is
Right.
the guy who can help you get your technology right. And all that is part of the process. Well, hey, folks, we're going to get to it because this guy, I love him to death. I love him like a brother. He and I have been friends ever since he was a graduate student of mine with University of Phoenix. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Satish Satman Mahadeo. Satish, how's it going, my brother?
Hey, good morning, everybody. It's going
Good
great.
morning.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm excited. I'm a little nervous, but I'm glad to be here with you guys. Milt, it's a pleasure to be on a show with you. Tony, same thing as well. So first of all, I want to say thanks to God. I know it's a public show and we can't specifically pray or anything like that, but just I definitely want to thank God for everything that He has put in my life, the people that He's put in my life, the people that He's given me as parents, the teachers, and all of the bosses that I've worked for. Because there's no such thing as a bad boss.
Hmm.
They say if you have a really bad boss, that's a good lesson in what not to be.
That's right.
So
That's
Amen.
right.
it's all how you look at it.
Right. That's right.
That is awesome. So now you say he's glad to be here. Now, where is here for you right now?
You say you're in sunny Columbus, Georgia. That's home for me. I've been
Uh,
there for many years, so that's home for me. But with my new lifestyle, I'm actually down in Miami, just chilling. This is a chilling weekend for me. Small bit of business on the side, and
Right.
just chilling.
Right.
hey
Staying
man,
staying focused.
ain't this virtual world awesome? Milton and I were joking about something before we came on the air. I was driving back from Roberta, and I was telling him I was going to do something when I got back to Columbus. But when I got to Butler, where I could get a cell signal, I said, "Wait a minute, I can do this on my phone." So hey, man, we can have you live from Miami, even though you live in Columbus. And again, we're reaching people all over the country. And so I want to thank you for your time this morning. Now, our topic today is Satish's journey from being a restaurant manager for much of his adult life, and with that dream and desire to be an entrepreneur. And he actually made that transition. In fact, I said in the promo for the show, he just finished up his rookie year as a as an entrepreneur, and I'm really really proud of him. As I said, he was someone I met as a student back in graduate school, and we just bonded out of our exciting beginnings there. But I will say this as a compliment to him, that you wouldn't meet a finer human being. I mean, just a gentleman among gentlemen. He's funny as all get out, but his determination to live life on his terms is rewarding him right now. But he was great at what he was doing. But like so many people, and that's what I want folks to get from the show, is they want to be their own boss. They want to run their own business. They want to do their own thing. And there's always these impediments and barriers. And so I want Satish to tell you guys how he managed to navigate to put himself on the other side of the ledger, and now he's able to enjoy being in Miami. And like I said, do a little business so you can write it off. You got to do it like that. But you see the smile on his face, so I want y'all to know why he's smiling the way he's smiling. Okay,
Okay.
but Satish, let's go back to your very beginnings. How about helping our viewers to get to know you a little bit on the human interest side, where you're from, who your folks, and kind of how you got to the point where you and I connected.
All right, good. So I'll give you the same answer that I do when I visit with clients or I meet people and they look at me and they kind of raise their eyebrow and because they hear this voice and this accent and they said, "Were you born here? Are you from here?" You know? And so I tell them, I said, "Look, my great grandparents were from India, and I'm pretty sure we probably have family in South Africa, but I grew up in the Caribbean. And depending on what group of people I'm talking to, if it's a group of Indian people that know sports and they
Mm-hmm.
play cricket, then I'll say the West Indies. But
Okay.
if it's anybody else, I'll say Caribbean because it's the last two islands in the Caribbean. So I was born and raised in, or reared rather, in Trinidad and Tobago. It's a twin island republic. And as we were talking earlier before the show, anybody who meets anybody that's from there, they don't say, "Well, I'm a Tobagonian," unless they specifically want to identify with the smaller islands. They
Right.
just call them Trinis. You see, you're a Trini. You're from Trinidad and Tobago. And so our acronym is TNT.
Okay.
So
TNT.
that's right.
Gotcha.
So my grandparents, that's right. My grandparents were farmers most of the year, and my dad was one of the first people from his village to finish elementary and high school, and then go on to further education. And when I hear their stories, it's what the things that inspire me, how they grew up and what they knew.
Right.
He would ride a bicycle, a couple hours to get to teachers training college, and even when he was working. And so, kind of like the first to make it out of his village, so to speak. And so that was one of the things that let me know that I've got big shoes to fill,
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
and grow up. And we grew up in a very tight knit community. Was family all the way around. You could stand on our back kitchen porch and just whistle, and my cousins would come out the other house, and then we would kind of make signals whether we were playing soccer that day or cricket that day or what. And we would help each other with the chores. I went to an elementary school where my mom was a teacher. We actually lived right next door.
Mm.
So I mean, even if you want to take a sick day, it was better you just go to school because you still heard the bell, you still heard the kids. Um, and In a way, it was really good to have her there. She taught me for 2 years, and I tell people it's the best, worst 2 years of my school life history. She was really tough at home and at school, and it kind of gave me a sense of security. But it also, I think, in a way, I felt later on in life, it kind of stifled me from being free because I always had to, like, everybody knows my mom works here. I got to be careful of my behavior, who I am, what I say.
My mom was
Can't
a
get in
teacher too, so
trouble.
I know exactly what you mean.
And so then I graduated. We're still on the British education system. So we wrote an exam, and then you go to a secondary school. And my secondary school was in the southern city called San Fernando.
Mm.
Um, San Fernando Government Secondary School, or at the time it was called Modern Secondary, or for short, they called it ModSec. And
Mindset.
so if anybody
Okay.
from ModSec is watching, what's up? And so I went to school there 5 years, had a real eye-opening experience because now I'm meeting kids who went to school in this city. There's nobody there that knows my mom and dad really, and it's a totally different environment because you're 10 and a half or 11 years old, and there's students who are doing advanced level studies in the same campus that are 17 and 18 years old. And so you're a little child walking around, and there's students there that may bully you, and they're full grown mustache and beard. So it was a different experience. And I graduated. I had just turned 16 when I graduated high school, and at that point in time, the choices were advanced level studies, which I didn't want to do, technical college, go into the family business, which my mom and dad were educators. So you either go work for the government, and at 16, it was tough to get a job. So I went to a tech college, and I met a professor there who had graduated from Auburn University with a degree in building technology. And he talked about it like it was the greatest place in the world. And he said, I'm making a trip this summer. If anybody wants to go, talk to your parents, and I can take you up there and get you enrolled. And he made it sound so simple. I don't know if he's listening. I invited him, but his name was
Oh,
Edward Barrett, and he brought 4 young men up here. We drove in from Miami overnight, found a place in Auburn. He got us registered at junior college and stuff like that, got us all set up. We found a place to live. I think he was there for like maybe a week and then he was gone. And so we came to the US with, probably a few $100s in our pockets and, kind of had to fend for ourselves. And, being the first, I'm the eldest on my dad's side of the family. And, I'm the eldest in my home. My mom, so always made sure we can take care of ourselves. And I was a mother hen of that group, I would say. And I think that's where the first inclination, other than being a big brother and a big cousin, always having to take care of everybody and set the example. Because even my grandmother would say, hey, you've got to, wherever you go in life, you've got to set the bar the highest it can be because the rest are going to have to follow you. And if they fall short a little bit, you don't want them to fall too far.
Mm,
So that
gotcha.
was that was some
that's deep.
big
Yeah.
shoes to fill,
Yeah.
and to carry on. Um, So, we came here and we went to school and we bought a car that broke down all the time. And I tell people now it was a good thing because that's how we learned to work on cars. Had it not been for that. But I tell you
Ironically,
what,
that's how I started working on computers too. So.
see, so I was very fit back then because, we walked everywhere. I had a bicycle and I think I told a story at the graduation, Tony, when I did
Oh, that's
the
right. You were
speech.
the commencement speaker.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I used to ride a bike back and forth, and it got stolen one day. We were all out back, eating some rice, and we looked at each other asking, "Where's the bike?" And the bike was gone.
Mm. Oh yeah.
So I started my career in the restaurant business at Pizza Hut. If I can name drop, I don't know if we can get sued for that, but whatever. Uh, I was a bus boy and a dishwasher, and opportunity always led itself. And my mother always said, whatever you do in life, do it to the best of your ability. If you're going to be a bum, be the best bum you can be.
Let me ask you a
And
question. I'm sorry. Which Pizza Hut did you work at?
3611 Pepperell Parkway, Opelika, Alabama, 36801. You can call them now, 334-749-7111.
Uh, I was trying to visualize because I used to go to the one there on Highway 280, and for some reason it just flashed through my
Oh,
mind.
that was the last Pizza Hut I worked at. I was a general manager at
That's
Highway 280.
amazing. That is milk. I just flashed to remember seeing it. That was before you even a student.
Wow,
Crazy.
yeah.
See, small world. Yeah,
It's
small
amazing how
world.
your mind, you ain't know you remembered something.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But
So
hey, before you continue, Satish, let me ask Milt to acknowledge any of the viewers that we have who joined us. Maybe your the gentleman who brought you over is watching, and if we got any shout outs. So Milt, who we have watching this morning?
So this morning we got Nikki Johnson watching. She says, "Good morning, team. Good morning."
What's going on there?
Uh,
Superhero?
yeah. She also says, "Amen" to your comment at the beginning about acknowledging God. Um, good morning. Charles Bowie is saying, "Good morning, Private Money Syndicate team. God bless you all. God bless you too." Uh, Victoria Patterson comes in, says, "Good morning."
Hey there, cuz.
Yasmin Singh Ramdil. Ramdil? Okay.
that's
Says good morning.
my sister-in-law,
Okay.
Oh,
cousin's
All
wife.
right.
hey.
Hello, 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 hello. Yep, she's coming in saying good morning as well. So that's all we got for right now. But we got a lot of people watching. So a lot of people's
That's
watching. And
fantastic.
if y'all watching, feel free to put comment or questions into the chat and we'll definitely address them.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tom.
Well, okay. Well, Satish, you were just getting into the beginnings of your corporate story. So if you would, yeah, let's let this flow into. All right, now you're working at restaurants and get us to how you got into management and that experience as you progress? Because I think oftentimes when people come from, most of us are from a country, come humble beginnings, the idea is climb the corporate ladder, and that is a measure of success that the world can reference that you're progressing. But it comes with a set of frustrations as well. So if you can get us inside that part of the story.
Right. And, so learning from what I've seen previously growing up, in Trinidad, it was you either work for the oil company or, the government. And, people have that mentality of longevity because you work for a company 30 years, you're going to get a pension, you're going to get, your social security, like what we call it. NIS, I think is what they call it back home. And so that was something that was kind of ingrained in our mind from a young age. You work, you dedicate your life and loyalty to someone for 30 years of your life. You give them all your talents and your time, and they're, going to take care of you in the end. And so when I found this job, my major at the time, even though I was in junior college, my major was, going to be in civil engineering. And then we had a change of management. Before that, so I tell people I came here in search of an education, and I met a girl and I fell in love, and I got a whole different kind of education in life.
Yeah, right.
I had this.
Yeah. And so, being part of a family or a household, in fact, so we had a change in management, and my new general manager didn't know anything about pizza. He knew management. He came from a different chain.
Mm.
So I taught him pizza, and he started teaching me management because I at that point, when I talked about opportunity is always there. So it was always someone calling out when I was a dishwasher. A cook was missing one day and they needed help, and they brought me over from the dish pit to help prep pizzas and cut pizzas. I remember the first pizza I ever cut, it was a large pan pizza. It was a large pan supreme pizza. And it was a rocker knife, the one that goes back and forth like that. And I've never used it in my life. And so the manager was standing there, and the guy's watching me, and she's like, go from 12 to 6, 3 to 9, and then cut the other 2 remaining pieces in 2. So when I came over, that should have been like, what, 5 to 11? I went from 5 and came back across to 7.
Right. Right, exactly. Or a frown, depending on which way you was looking.
You're right. And so the guy was laughing, and he tipped me $2, And I started learning to make the dough and everything. Back then, it's not the frozen commissary stuff that they use today. It was everything was made by hand and had to proof and all that. And my first boss, he trusted me a lot, and that meant a lot to me. And he would have me help open up the restaurant. And by the time the other guy got there, I was on the make line. I was one of the lead cooks on the make line. And I had a really good memory. On a busy Friday night, I could, if they lost a ticket on the cutting table and they told me what was on the pizza, I could tell them who the server was and what table it went to, and be right 100% of the time.
Man, that's awesome.
That was when I was young. So, but my district manager saw that at some point, and I had a guy named Danny used to fill up the ice and tea, and he couldn't stand for the servers to yell at him. And so I would kind of look, and at the corner of my eyes, I would see the servers tipping the tea urn or reaching way down into the ice bin to get ice. And I would give him a heads up. And so he would get there before they would even start yelling at him. And so I became a shift manager. I was a shift manager for 30 days. And then I became an assistant in LaGrange, where I worked with a guy named Mike Winston. And I was there for about a year. And then my junior year at Auburn, we had our first child in January, and the day after she was born, my boss that helped me get promoted and everything, he was an area manager in Augusta, and he called, and I thought he was calling to say congratulations, but he was calling to offer me a job. Didn't know anything about the baby. So when I told him, he said, well, good, you need this now because you're a family man. He said, if you're going to say yes, I need your answer by tomorrow, and I need you here by Sunday. And this was Thursday.
Oh, wow.
So I talked it over with my wife at the time, and we decided that if I didn't say yes at this point, they're probably not going to offer me anything later on. They're going to say he's not serious. And I don't want to say the pressure, because it's always been a privilege to take care of my family, but that weight on the shoulder of it, the buck stops here. It's with me to provide. That has always been a driving force And let's face it, people that work in the restaurant business or most corporate entities know that, hey, you're going to get health benefits. For us, we got a free meal every day. So, I mean, boy, got to eat.
Can't complain about that.
That's right. And, if you see me down here and I tell you, I tell people all the time and I say I'm a vegetarian, they look at my gut. I said, hey, I know. You can't believe it. But,
I eat a lot of veggies. I eat a lot of veggies.
that's right. A lot of carbs. A lot of carbs. And so I always thought I would stay with Pizza Hut because I went from being a dishwasher to a shift manager, assistant manager, and then within 4 years I was a general manager in Augusta, Georgia.
Mm.
And when I came back to corporate, and I had at that time now I had my 4 children at the time, and I always told people, you cut me, I bleed pizza sauce. I'm never going to leave. They've taken care of me, and I thought the world of Pizza Hut, and I still do. I'm very loyal to the brand because I have a lot of memories
Right,
about
right.
Pizza Hut. It was my first job in the U.S. The environment that I was first in was very family oriented, and I try to reach out to those people, and
Right.
it's sad to hear that I find out that some of them that were an integral part of my induction into the U.S. culture are passed away.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, Satish, if you can take us from the Pizza Hut to, all right, you got into management there, and then because I want to give ample time to talk about the entrepreneurial journey. So
Yeah.
let's go to the other chains that you work with,
Right.
and how you kind of went from this one to that one, and that part of the migration. I'm sure you were attracted to those, or people were attracted to you, and they drew you because you're just an awesome guy.
Right. So the cutting me and bleeding pizza sauce was my reply to people that were trying to recruit me all the time at Pizza Hut. And I tell them straight up, I said no. And it took 4 months of wooing, I would say, from a headhunter that worked at Cracker Barrel.
Mm-hmm.
And we had just recently been bought out again. I had left, ran away from Augusta because they got bought out by a franchise. And all the things that we had worked hard to build. Like I told my team when I got to Augusta, there was a big poster on the front. It was a delivery store with a carry-out option, and there was a big poster, and it was lit up. And I said, we're going to make that, because back then you had all the backlash about McDonald's showing the burger, and it wasn't that. And I said, we're going to make what our
Right.
picture says we're going to make. Okay. And so it took about 9 months to round out a perfect team,
Right.
make the
Right.
perfect dough, make the perfect pizza all the time. And we grew the business. I mean, we went from doing 13,000 a week to, when I left 3 years later, that restaurant was averaging 19,000 a week,
So,
and it
That's
was
good.
going door to
That's good.
door every, once a week and meeting people, and people would have me pick up their kids and their grandkids from school. They trusted me. Um, So, I was very loyal. I left, I came back corporate, and then Cracker Barrel, obviously. And so when the guy at Cracker Barrel said, he said, listen, you've been there this long, you're making X. He said, we're going to bring you in making somewhere between this, and you don't know anything about our company, and we're willing to pay you this, right?
mm-hmm.
Don't you want to get out of a trailer and have a house for your family? Don't you want to be able to send those kids
Mm.
to the college that they want to go to rather than something you only can afford? Don't you want to be able to, take your wife
Mm.
on a vacation when your anniversary comes around?
That's
And
a
so,
salesman, man.
Right.
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. You're
these
wooing.
things started,
They were
when I was
courting
at
you.
Miles. And it goes back to that, we say it now in the insurance business. When you meet somebody and they say, I'm good, people don't know what they don't know.
That's right.
Right.
And at that point in time, I didn't know what I didn't know. And I didn't have someone to mentor me kind of in the way like you've done, Tony, over the years that I've known you, or, even, I've had some great, I don't want to say bosses, but supervisors in all the restaurants. So I left Pizza Hut. It was heartbreaking. And I went to Cracker Barrel and I threw myself into it 100% because I was like, there's no looking back. I can't, there's no going back. I have to. So I aced every test, every written test, because I was a nerd, right? So
Nerds rule.
I that's right. That's right. And so, I had to do well because now my family's counting on me. And, I was with Cracker Barrel for about 4.5 years. I loved it. I loved the brand. I tell people when I hang out with other people, especially, if you're African American or white, I said, wherever we go, I'm the guy that's going to stick out because, I don't look normal. Um, so people at the home office knew me by name. I would get to the
Right.
home office at Cracker Barrel and they walk up and they're like, "Hey, Satish, how you doing?" I was like, "Oh my God, people know me here."
That's
And
scary. That's scary.
country music, I'd gotten kind of used to listening to the country music, and that's
Yeah.
actually where I met Richard Parker. He came along when I was at Opelika. Sorry, Richard, I know that's not on your resume because it was just like a blip. But that's where I met Richard, and he left there. He knew it wasn't a fit for him,
Right.
and this is where the maturity level is different. He'd been through a couple of jobs, and he knew enough about himself that he knew that that was not a good fit for him. Whereas me, I was like, I have to make this work.
Right. Okay.
And so he went to Darden, and then I opened a few Cracker Barrels, and I opened the one in Columbus. It was a very successful opening. And, Richard and I stayed in touch, and he was looking for a manager at the time. I was running the one in the interim at Columbus.
Right.
I went and interviewed, and I think by that afternoon, I had a phone call. Wanted me to go take I guess we could say drug test. Drug test, yeah.
Mhm.
And
ASAP.
they offered me the job, and I look back now and I was like, I was such a naive dumb butt back then. I asked for exactly what I was making at the other place, because I was looking at it's a better quality of life. I'm not going in at 4:30 in the morning and getting stuck till 8, 9
Right.
o'clock at
Right.
night.
Yeah.
Right.
And the longest week and the longest day I've ever worked was at Cracker Barrel. And I'm not
Mhm.
complaining. I'm just saying I learned a lot about myself.
Right.
I went in one morning and opened, and the closing manager called out, and the gentleman that was the mid manager had to open the next day. So I was like, "You go ahead and go on. I'll close up, and I'll go home and get some sleep." Well, the night maintenance guy that stays overnight in the building called out, and we couldn't find anybody to cover.
Mm.
So I had to stay in the building and do the night maintenance work.
Oh wow.
And I was there when the guy came back that morning to open up, and he was like, "Dude," and I said, "Yep, still here."
That's a story of dedication.
So
Well, let's pause. I'll let you wrap that up in just a second. But I saw the Viceroy looking at the computer screen. We got any questions for him? That's why I wanted to pause and see if any other shout outs.
Yeah, no, nobody's chiming in just yet. Charles Bowie says that's awesome the way things opened up for him.
Uh,
Talent, dedication, and hard work paid off. So
okay.
they're just listening to the story and got a few people laughing. And so
Nice, Satish. Well, I guess in 2 or 3 more minutes, yeah, let's get to where the corporate journey kind of ended and we started transit, or at least in that throes of that, got to get into the transition to your entrepreneurial side.
yeah. So went to work with Richard at the Olive Garden. I was with them for a very long time, and about the time because Richard left, and a couple of the other managers left, and about the time that I kind of turned in my notice. Quick story, I'll tell you. This is the real BHAG Satish brain. So I used to tell people that my wildest dream, I want to coach the national soccer team, take them to the World Cup, and win. Okay. And then with that newfound fame or whatever you want to call it, notoriety, probably get into politics and go into leadership back home and make a difference. Because when I left
I can
home, I
see
had a
that. I can
notebook.
see
On
that
the back
happening. I can
cover,
see that happening.
it said on the back cover, it said, go to Auburn, get a degree, come back home, make a difference. And I found it many, many years later, and I took a picture of it and sent it to my brother. And he
Right.
said, "It's not too late."
Right, exactly.
So one night I was sitting up at the bar, I'd already turned in my notice, I think. And anyhow, I was telling this to one of our bartenders that worked there. And she came back later on in life and told me, she said, "That was the story. When you told that story, it made me see you differently than just a manager."
Mhm.
And she ended up being my second wife. Tony, you were there for that wedding.
Yeah.
So
Well,
and we have a little boy, 5-year-old boy together.
wow.
So I left Olive Garden, moved on, did a couple other places, but wherever I went, something was kind of nagging at me. When I was a young guy in elementary school on the summers when they had summer school, my mom would buy these what do we call them here, Tony? The little, like, it's a liquid in a plastic bag and you freeze it like a freezy pop kind of thing.
Freeze pop, yeah.
And so we would put it in our freezer, and during the break, the kids would come over and I would sell it to them.
Mm-hmm.
I would sell bottles and stuff like that. There was a guy would drive around and call out buying bottles back when glass bottles were being recycled.
Right.
And so I look back at those things and I was like, my mom and my dad were coaching me to go into business for myself even before I even realized it. And, we have a term in the restaurant business when something's getting close to expire, we say it's about to reach its shelf life.
Okay.
I remember telling Richard one time, I said, I think I'm reaching my shelf life in the restaurant business.
Yeah. Well, and as much as you were, and I've known you for years, and I've known Richard too, and it's amazing how hard people who work in restaurants, managed restaurants. I mean, that's a high. You have turnover. You've got all the details of the operations. You got all the logistics that goes into delivering the experience for the customer. And a lot of restauranting is entertainment. And from the standpoint that, I've known you to be very aware of experience. I remember when you were at Olive Garden, I remember coming there a time or two while you were managing. And I mean, that value that you have that's been recognized by all those folks who've seen you and want to recruit you and were glad to have you in their businesses is evident. But what I'd like to ask you to do is, at what point did you see that power that you have as this is my resource and I can employ it myself, and let that be a fuel for you to actually start making that transition? I mean, taking ownership of your resource, I guess is what I would call it, but now want to take it to your own marketplace.
Well, some of it was, meeting people like you, Tony, that, I remember your story talking about, you were doing this part-time with Primerica. And if you remember, I almost came on board at Primerica. It was just I couldn't get the time off being in the restaurant business to take the necessary exams and take the classes. And it's always been kind of a hindrance even to the point of, having to take weekends off when I would get time with my kids after my first divorce. I had to have my mom and dad come up here, rotating to be able to provide support for me. Because now, you're living on half your salary and still maintaining a full household. But, I had friends that also left the business, and some people that I have kind of given ideas to. There's a gentleman that works at AutoNation named Walter Miller. He was a neighbor of mine, came to work at Olive Garden, anyhow, moved on to a few things when I was at Ruby's. And he said, what is something that you think I would be good at? And he had a great personality, great charisma. I said, cars or real estate. Those are the things that people that I know who have left the business and retired have kind of gone on to do part-time. And he's done really well. He's 4 years into it. He was a finance manager. So in 2016, I put on Facebook, I said, I'm out. I got out the restaurant business. And he called me up and he said, let me return the favor. And so I went over there, met his boss, and I dressed, pretty nice, kind of like I am now, and the guy sat down, called him over. And this is what he said to me. He said, well, Walt has good things to say about you. I don't have any questions. If you want to start, when do you want to start?
Mm-hmm.
And that was the interview.
Right.
And, that meant a lot to me, that, here I am. I knew somebody that, their word meant that much. And so I did it for a little while. And, I had to leave a few times. We had some deaths in the family back home. And in that type of business, when you leave, you got to turn over all the clients that you're prospecting to someone else. And then the week that you're gone, you're not making any phone calls to set appointments for the next week. So when you come back, you're 2 weeks behind.
Right.
And the environment was a little bit different than, the restaurant. And I'd always try to, I don't want to say anything negative, but I've always tried to keep a professional environment, a professional kitchen, and it's different. It's just, car sales is a little different. And kind of at that point in my life, kind of like Richard said at Cracker Barrel, I didn't think it was a perfect fit for me.
Right.
And so I went back into the restaurant business for a little while, but that taste was there now. Right.
Okay.
And I started doing.
You let out of the cage once and you saw what it was like.
Right. And I started doing Lyft Uber first, and then I started doing Lyft. And I was like, that's when the mentality change happened. my car can either be an asset or a liability.
Right.
Right. So I started doing this on my own. And then the last place I was at was Waffle House during the pandemic. And
Right.
they cut pay, and then they cut hours, and then you were fighting to make ends meet. And at that point I was doing Instacart also.
Mm-hmm.
And I would keep in touch with, I think I would screenshot my earnings and send it to Tony. And
And let me take the opportunity to say that, this is part of, I guess, when I was talking to Satish, and I think before we actually went on air, I said, look, you have to make that migration from your steady pay to live off of what you make. And I said, we set goals and you be pushing, and I appreciate you being accountable that way, because it's part of a strategy that you engaged and was successful with.
Right.
So during the lockdown day of the pandemic, that Sunday, I went to work at the Waffle House, and I was scheduled to come in at 9. They called me, said don't come till 10. I was scheduled to work till 4, and they let me go at 2. And I said, you know what, bump this. I turned on the app. I still had the Waffle House uniform on. I turned on my Lyft app, and I had never been that busy driving Lyft in Columbus. My battery died, and I had to turn it off because I was like, I don't have my charger with me. And then I had a strategy while I was there. So I would, if I was working Waffle House the second shift from 2 to 9, I would get up in the morning. I did Instacart in the morning, went to work at the Waffle House. And then in the night when I got off, I dedicated at least 2 hours to driving Lyft.
Right.
Right. Because Lyft, you can drive anytime. The Instacart was mostly in the day.
Mm-hmm.
And all the while I was studying for my life insurance exam, because I met a young lady, and I got to give her a shout out, Monique Baker. I met her. She came to the house, and she was trying to sell my dad a policy. And I said, look, do you make good money doing, because I know Tony Calloway and all these other guys that have done this, and they talk like it's the best thing in the world. And she said, yeah, I do pretty good, and I work 3 days a week. I said, show me the proof.
Mm-hmm.
And she did, and that was it for me. I started studying and all that. So I made that transition. And Tony, you know that in those 2 weeks, you were telling me, give it a couple months, make sure you can do it for a couple months. And
Right.
after the second week that I outpaced my earnings at a salaried corporate job doing gig work, I told Tony, I said, no, I'm done. Deuces, I'm out.
Deuces, I'm out. Yep.
Peace.
Yeah. And really, that was it. I was out. And when I started in the insurance business, again, it's always been through network and help. Richard put me on with a company called Bankers Life, and I started with them. And, it was very professional attire and all that. The training was well. And then I ran into an old friend of mine called Steve Scott. And I was actually doing another side hustle with a buddy of mine, Julio. And I was delivering peaches, and I delivered them to his house. And he said, is this what you're doing? I said, no, I've been, doing insurance with Bankers Life. He said, your insurance. And he put me in touch with his daughter-in-law. And she's been a mentor to me. It's a local company called Southern Life Insurance Group out of Leach, Georgia. And, I went along, I did the training, and, before going out on my first week, so, you buy leads and then you go see the clients.
Mm-hmm.
So before starting my first week on my own, I said, no, I've got to I've got to do a trial run. And so I bought some sub leads and went out, saw some clients out in Parrott County and all that down there in Walker County, I think it's called. I don't know. And the first house, yeah, Weston County, that's right. Yeah. So the first house I went to on that Saturday, man, I'm shaking, the lead's shaking in my hand, and I'm nervous. And I'm trying to be confident, right? And so I explained to the lady why I'm there, and show her my credentials and everything. And I'm just being nice and being honest and genuinely caring for what she needs. And she said, "Well, I got some insurance." I said, "Well, you probably need some more." and she said, "Yeah, I do." And I said, "Okay." And so we sat down. And I wrote a policy, and once I wrote that first policy, and I proved to myself that, hey, I can do this, it was a first step on that leap of faith. There's a Disney movie called Onward, mm-hmm. and there's a scene in that movie where they have to across this gorge, this great divide, and there's no
Oh, you froze. Did
to
we
the
lose
ledge,
him?
There we
like
go.
this invisible force shield supports him
Uh-huh.
because of his belief, and he's able to cross, and that's how it felt. That getting into it, it really felt. And anybody that's getting into it, I would take Tony's advice and make sure you can do it for a couple of months before you say deuces. But you have to want it bad enough. You have to come to a point where you recognize, listen, my talent can be used in so many other ways. I can do something else. Even if this is not the dream that I'm chasing, it's going to get me closer to that dream, you know?
Right.
Exactly.
So I think that is very important.
Yeah. All right,
Absolutely.
let's take a second. Maestro, any shout outs or questions for Satish? I've got another question I want to ask as our time's starting to tick away,
No, no,
Satish.
not right now. Everybody's just kind of watching and
Spellbound.
they're throwing hearts and laughs up, that's it, they're just really enjoying the story and so
All right.
definitely
Well, let me
Yeah.
let me ask you this
And I want to
question.
say,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say now, this is how I'm used to talking because I've done this for 30 years. I've had to assimilate and sound like I belong here. So people back home, if there anybody back home or anybody that knows me from before the U.S. days, I'm sorry.
said I'm
This is just
sorry.
this just
Well,
happens naturally.
let's hear a little bit of this Trinidadian accent because I was thinking when we were
No.
talking today, I said you
Uh,
usually sound a bit more British.
oh yeah, yeah. That's a
Like a
little
Have
bit
that
way
London
British,
bloke,
British
huh?
Caribbean.
so Trinidad accent. I would say, uh, Tony, it was really nice for you to invite me to the show today, man. I had a good time.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Well, now answer this in whichever dialect that you choose or accent. Um, if you were talking to someone about some of the misconceptions, and you take that word loosely, about being making the transition from having a salary with benefits and all that stuff to becoming an entrepreneur, solopreneur, what are two or three of those that just popped to mind that you would say that here's what you would do, or it wasn't like I thought it was going to be, if you get the gist of my question.
Yeah. So there are things I think, and I learned this. Growing up, we followed the teachings of Sai Baba, and he talks about needs and wants and desires, and he said if you can eliminate your desires and focus and get rid of your ego, which has been a challenge for me, a center of attention kind of person. Um, it would make life worth living. And I grew up very religiously. Um, so you've got to have faith first and foremost
Mm-hmm.
in God, or whether it be science or yourself. And for me, it's been a hard thing to have faith in myself because there's always this kind of like nagging, sense of failure. The fear of
Mm.
failure, I think, is so great that it's kind of kept me. And I'll tell a quick story. So many people might know Octavia Spencer, the actress.
Yes.
Um, right. So I worked with Octavia at the Pizza Hut in Opelika when we were going to Auburn
Are you
back
serious?
then.
Wow.
Yes, he was a server there with my first wife, and I was really into writing music and movies and all kind of crazy stuff back then. And the Batman movie was getting ready to come out, and I wrote this rap for the Batman movie. And another friend there had some cousins that did music, and I went to their house and we did the song. And so she was talking about it because they told her about it, and Octavia heard about it. And she came back to the dish area one day. We were putting up some stuff, and she said, "I heard you rap or something." And I said, "Oh yeah." And she said, "Well, give me a sample." And I was kind of nervous, but I did. And she looked at me, and I'll never forget this. She looked at me and she said, "What are you doing with your life?"
Mm.
And I said, "I'm going to get my degree, and I'm married, and I'm probably going to start a family." She said, "I'm going to Hollywood next year, and I think you should come."
Wow.
And I said, "I don't know about that." And she said, and then the other thing she said, "Don't live to regret it."
Wow, man.
But I say that to say this: she believed in her dream, and she was willing to chase after it. There's another young man here in Columbus named Christian Ortiz that worked with us at the Olive Garden, and he's doing phenomenal things. the best people in whatever field are the best because they're willing to put in a little bit of work, be consistent every single day. I read
Mm,
an article many years ago about Will Smith was being interviewed, and he talked about the wall that him and his brother built one summer. And he said, every day was, he hated it. And, I don't like using that word, but that's his word.
mm,
Um, and he said when they got done, they sat on the porch, and his dad, you remember his dad pointing out to it, and they looked at it, and it was like, wow, we built that? And he said, yeah. And he said, you know how you did that? And he said, no. He said, one brick at a time.
mm-hmm.
And so that's what it takes, the one brick at a time, the willingness to do it for you and your family.
Right.
Just about everything I've tried and earnestly asked God for, I've gotten. And he has a sense of humor. I may not have it all at the same time, but or when I want it, but it's getting there. And it's being willing to get up and do the work. And I've seen
Right.
people around me who are willing to get up and do the work and make it happen every single day. There's another guy I worked with at Olive Garden named Fred Howard.
Mm-hmm.
Fred was a skinny little guy, and he started pumping iron and working out and getting fit and all that. And Fred is a champion now. He's won several titles. He's got his own food line getting started.
Yep.
So it's
Yeah,
those things.
I
Don't
went to Carver with him. That's what's one of my friends. Yeah.
Okay, so
Hmm.
small world.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that is amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Satish, we got about 6 minutes left. I do want to ask if we have any questions, Milt, that he can answer before I ask a last question here. Give
No,
time for the audience.
we got a lot of comments that came through. So let's address those. Rupa
Okay, cool.
Mahadeo says it's all good. The Trini still love you.
That's my little sister.
Oh, okay, okay. Victoria Patterson says, great conversation. She's enjoying this. Um, Angela Blackberry Streeter, Washington says, don't live to regret your dreams, your goal, monuments that you fail not to go after, and which is true, which is what you
So
were
true.
just saying. Yep. Faith is the key, Victoria Patterson says. Uh, Yasmin says, what's the best advice you received that helped shape who you are? Um, and then there's another question after that, but I'll go ahead and let you just
Okay.
All
address
right.
that one.
We got about 6 minutes,
So
so go ahead,
Yeah,
Satish. Just
yeah.
yeah, I'm going to go right back to what my mother said. The best advice: just be the best that you can be. Don't and that didn't sink in until recently in life, really. That be the best you that you can be. Don't worry about and again in our culture
Right.
growing up, it was always worried about what other people are going to say and what this family is going to say about your family and don't worry about that stuff. Be you, be happy.
all right. And what's the next question there, Maestro?
Says, was there ever a time when you felt like giving up or gave up? And if you did not, what kept you going?
All right. So
And that's Rupa again. Rupa.
to be honest in that answer, was there ever time I felt like giving up? Yes. Was there ever time I gave up? Up here I did, right? And that's the wrong place to give up. I never gave up in my heart, right? Because there's always something that keeps you moving forward. You've got to keep moving forward. If you stop, you
Always.
die.
Yeah.
And then I got to think about people like you, Rupa, that are looking up to me as a bigger brother. So I can't give up. Faith keeps me going. God, when I look back at all the things that I've been through, and I've made it through, and it's not a test until you're really tested.
Right.
Mhm.
If you haven't been tested, then it
Right.
wasn't a test. And
Right.
when you come through the fire and you can make it, you look back and say, "Hey, I'm that much stronger. What else is there for me?"
What?
So
Nothing can stop
when
you.
the hits start coming, it's like, "Okay, come on, let's go.
That's
Let's
right.
roll with it."
Yeah. Let me chime in that relates to that as a strategy I encourage people to explore. First thing is preparation. Know that you're prepared, whether the study, the practice, the routines, the discipline, develop your capacity. Now, once you've got the capacity, everything else to me comes down to having a plan and then execution. So, like Satish, I would tell him, I said, hey, you got to call, you got to go hit 50 doors a day. I said, that's the plan. Now, out of 50, do you think you'll find one person that's going to say yes? if my reasonable, intelligent mind says that I'll get a yes, and the yes is equating to maybe making $500 or whatever the math is, then the activity, I got the plan now. The activity is go hit 50 doors. And just like you said, you went on that first call. Now, whether it's the first or the 50th, until you go through 50, you don't know what's going to happen. And so when it comes down to anybody who's in sales, you got to have your activity plan. And so if you know you're prepared, then go do the work. And the work is rewarded after you've done it. So if it's 50 calls, 50 door knocks, 50 emails, 50 whatever, everything I do is always numbers driven. What's the activity that yields a result? So from the standpoint, Satish probably remembers those conversations where, I'd say, well, how many did you do today? How many did you do today? Because, and I see him smiling, but that is the confidence. You got to draw confidence in your activity.
Right.
And as long as and the rewards will come infallibly, because there's somebody, like you said, who needs what you got. You're looking for the ones who are looking for you. It's not about what they think about you or anything. It's just, you just find the right people at the right time, with the right message. And so he's living testimony. So let me take this with the last few minutes. What is life like now that you're an entrepreneur? I mean, what's give us about three good minutes of wow,
Real quick, I wanted to add this too, Tony. So when I first started, people asked about the doubts and all that. When I first started, I had an okay week and an okay month. And you can have a bad day and you can have a bad week, but you can't have a bad month. Mm-hmm. And so about the giving up and the fear, it's still there. And fear is a healthy thing. It keeps you going. But when I first started and I did well, I was like, okay, I can do this. And then there was a bad week. And then there was a second bad week. And then I had that fear of, did I make a mistake? And I prayed about it. And in the beginning, I was so focused on, I have to do this in order to make this, in order to pay my bills. When I started giving it all to God and I said, look, I'm going to go out here and I'm going to do what I can do. And you handle the rest, bro. All right. And I really genuinely care about the people and their needs and meeting their needs and helping them. It's about really genuinely helping them and believing in what you do.
Yes.
And then everything else will fall in place. So how is life different?
Facts.
All right, I'll tell you this. Tony, and people that have known me in the restaurant business, there's been 14 and 16-hour days. There's been jobs that I used to drive 2 hours to get to, work 12 hours, drive back 2 hours to get home. I don't know how I did it with 4 hours of sleep. I don't, without crashing on the highway.
Grace of God, man. Grace of God.
Yeah, for real. And work 6 days a week, 7 days a week, phones blowing up all hours of the night. Just for y'all listening out there, I want you to look me in my eyes. I want to listen. I work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and sometimes on Thursday morning. And if there's an odd appointment, Friday or Saturday. That's it. And I'm paying my bills.
Amen. Now that's success. I'm proud of you, man. Really proud of you.
It's the beginning. It's the beginning. So,
well, hey, you scored
God has been very good.
And like I said, well, I said it. I want to put it in context. Making that first year as an entrepreneur, like, I mean, you're a 5%er. I mean, from the standpoint, most people jump out, jump back. They start, they give up, something happens. I mean, all these things have happened to you. All those things happen to me, happen to anybody who. But once you realize what freedom and responsibility, because they're together, freedom with responsibility is all about. You realize that all that other stuff was, I won't say it was make believe, but the notion that you have to have a job, the guaranteed salary and all that other stuff. All you have to do is go to work, be a servant, have value in what you deliver to people. And if no more than you doing the same thing, paying your bills, the lifestyle, the freedom, the less stress, the things, or the different, there's a use stress. You have stress, but it's the stress that you chose, not one that's dropped
imposed on you, right?
Imposed on you. And I just encourage everybody to please, listen to what Satish has shared, try to connect with his spirit. He said a lot and he's demonstrated a lot through that faith. And as I say, it's faith without works is dead. And the frustration I'll leave with this, and I'll let Satish close, is that you're living a life of quiet desperation when your heart and your mind and your body is telling you you want something, but you're not giving in to that. Yes, Maestro, I see you want to
Well, I
say
do
something.
want to say this. I do want to, because there's other comments. So make sure you go in there, Satish, and address those. But I just want to give you this one because I think it's special for you. Uh, he says, "Make it happen. You know who this is."
Richard Parker.
Boom. So I
Uh,
just wanted to make
well,
sure you got that shout out, because I know how much that means to you. So
yeah.
definitely.
Well,
But
hey,
go ahead.
we're about down to the end of our time. So, Satish, I want to thank you so much for making time to come on the show. Our friendship is enduring, and I'm so you. I mean, you are, like I said, that in that 5% range, man. And so I know you're going to do big things. We'll probably have you back on the show again. And I just want to say that if you are the example not only for your family but just what you share with the audience. You're an example for those who aspire to be free. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the Mind Your Business Show, another great episode. So please, I want to go to YouTube. We're on YouTube now. We need to get to 10,000 subscribers. Last time I checked, we were at 16. And so I'm counting on you right now to go to YouTube, find a Private Money Godfather channel, and hit that, as I say, smash that subscribe button. So it's the
Smash it.
Private Money Godfather channel on YouTube. And so I want to say to Maestro, hey, thanks for getting us on the air this morning. You're awesome, man. And as everybody knows, if you're going to go in business and stay in business, you must mind your business. So, Maestro, I'll let you take us on home.
All right, and don't forget, we got your cybersecurity needs taken care of. We still got time for that deal for the rest of the month. So y'all take care. Make sure you take advantage of that. Go to privatemoneysyndicate.com and schedule a consultation. And on that note, we're gonna see y'all on the next one. Y'all take care. Have a great rest of your weekend. Enjoy Memorial Day. All that good stuff. Peace.
There you go. All right. Thanks.